The ANC NEC meeting enters its second day today. It's set to discuss several issues, including the organization's renewal and service delivery, among other things. Our senior reporter, Aviwe Mtila, is in Boksburg. He joins me now for the latest there. Good morning, Aviwe. Of course, it is still early days there, I guess, on your side at the Boksburg. But of course, yesterday, there were a few interesting things that were mentioned by the several ministers, of course, in that briefing. Maybe just give us a little bit of a recap and what can we expect today?
Definitely, day two is underway of the ANC NEC meeting. Remember, that's the highest decision-making body of the party in between conferences. They're converging in Boksburg. That's at the Birchwood Conference Center. Already started off at 8 o'clock today on day two. We heard from some of the party members in different portfolios that are, discussing the myriad issues that face the country. We heard from the Secretary General of the party, Fikile Mbalula, that indeed the 91 cases that have gone through the Integrity Commission will be presented here, and there's a possibility that there will be a special NEC meeting that will delve into those 91 cases that the Integrity Commission of the party has to look at. In fact, the SG of the party, Fikile Mbalula, went on to mention two particular cases that went through the commission. That would be the one involving the president and the Pala scandal, and also the one that involves Zweli Mkhize and Digital Vibes. Those will be presented to the Commission, and then that special NEC will sit. But of course, service delivery, as you mentioned, is on the fore. We're expecting Senzo Mchunu, the Minister of Water and Sanitation, to actually brief the media on some of the interventions that will be tackled there, but also load shedding, and also mentioned there from the Electricity Minister that in fact it's stifling the growth of the economy. If we were not to have load shedding, in fact, we would see at least 2% growth, and the promise that was by December, in fact, from the president that we heard earlier on, that by December we should see the end of load shedding. But the electricity minister suggests that, in fact, the promise is that we'll have more days without seeing load shedding, not confirming that we'll actually see the end of load shedding. I'm seeing the spokesperson of the ANC coming in now. Sis Matlengu, thank you for joining us once more. I want to tackle the issues around the integrity report. 91 cases that have gone through the commission. Have they already been presented here, as the SG suggested yesterday, and what's been said about them inside here?
Well, the ANC did say, Aviwe, that we are actually convening a special National Executive Committee meeting simply because of the gravity of the issues, he said, and I'm just paraphrasing him, immediately, very soon after this NEC meeting. So the report will be tabled, but it will be processed by that special National Executive Committee, which is going to be actually set up, which is unprecedented, set up solely to focus on all the cases that are before the Integrity Commission, to look at the terms of reference of the Integrity Commission, work done thus far, what is outstanding, what leadership support the Integrity Commission requires from this highest decision-making structure of the ANC in between conferences.
Okay, let's look at day one yesterday and maybe talk us through of some of what was discussed. We understand service delivery in municipalities, provincial government, as well as national level was at the fore, you mentioned yesterday.
Totally at the fore. And of course, we also had a number of other organizational discussions, such as our approach to how we deal with the world and how we deal with the national political situation in South Africa. We had an extensive political overview by the president. We also have what is normally referred to as a report of the National Working Committee, which is a working structure that meets fortnightly and sometimes more often than that, actually, presented by the SG, which usually forms the basis for establishing whether the National Working Committee is executing properly on the mandate discharged to it by the National Executive Committee. A number of those things, whether it is about matters of water and sanitation, were part of that agenda item, matters related to crime and combating illegal mining, a number of those issues pertaining to the situation in Palestine. All of those issues were ventilated. So it's been going according to plan. And day two, we are now looking at this morning. We are currently analyzing our own in-house elections research to see what our own research is telling us about our state of readiness to go on a spirited warfare as we fight the election and humbly engaging with our people, with modesty, with humility, but ramping up our campaign. We have not launched our campaign yet. We are still just doing the back-end work. So that is what is being presented this morning as I speak to you. We're also reviewing our manifesto. Some of that was discussed yesterday, but today we're now looking at a way forward in terms of the manifesto review process that has been a very successful exercise and has given us a number of pointers about the types of things that must go into our next elections manifesto.
And what's been said about the state-owned entities, especially around Transnet?
Well, what's been said about that? I mean, there's going to be a discussion about SOEs. It's a forecast discussion, this one. There will be a presentation, so it's not been discussed for now, but there will be a presentation by Comrade Pravin Gordhan to the NEC, and then obviously the discussions will ensue.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the spokesperson of the African National Congress on just what we expect on day 2, and just maybe to elaborate more on what happened on day 1. Remember, going into this NEC meeting, there was that harsh criticism coming from the former President Thabo Mbeki, just around the party itself not able to renew itself since 2017 when it elected President Cyril Ramaphosa to be the ANC president, and again last December in that elective conference that happened in Nasrec. That resolution was adopted once more that the party should indeed renew itself, but former president suggesting that it hasn't happened. He couldn't make it to the NEC meeting, sending apologies, which the SG reiterated to the media, but the SG also had comments, Fikile Mbalula, just on what the former president had to say. Let's just take a listen. I'm not sure if we have time to take a listen at Fikile Mbalula and what he had to say just around those utterances from former President Thabo Mbeki.
So, President Mbeki and his views about the renewal could be justified given the pace and where you want the organization to be at. And in this particular instance, if you are an organization which has got elders like him, you don't argue with them. You embrace what they say as a constructive criticism, even if they have to raise it in public. In the midst of our enemies, is still fine with us. That's what makes the ANC better. That's what makes the ANC to win the accolade of a people's movement. Umbutho wabantu. Because everybody has got a claim to this organization. Even people who are fierce critics of the ANC, they will tell you, I was here. I was made to move a bit because of the following things were not met. To win those people back, it's important that we must listen. If you are an organization that is allergic to criticism, you will not grow. You will not even be seen to be an organization on the mend.
And of course, yesterday, Aviwe, we heard again from the Secretary General, Fikile Mbalula, also, talking about how load shedding could be something of the past come even before the end of this year. Again, these promises being made. What did he have to say about that, and what did the Electricity Minister, Kgosientsho Ramokgopa, also have to say about this?
Oddly enough, you asked that when even journalists posed the question to the Electricity Minister, that is this not an election ticket, sort of promising that will eradicate load shedding and do away with it ahead of the elections? And he assured us, no, that's not the case. But of course, we've heard even from President Cyril Ramaphosa that by December we should see the end of load shedding, reiterated, as you mentioned, by the Secretary General. But when you ask the Electricity Minister, the promise is that we'll see a lot more days without load shedding come December. They're on the right trajectory in terms of getting those megawatts, much needed megawatts, on the grid that we do need. We do understand that on an average day now we sit around some 29,000 megawatts, but we do need, of course, that capping of around 35,000 megawatts in order to be at a safe place and see the end of load shedding. So he promises that at least towards December we'll have more days without load shedding, but not promising that we'll see the end of load shedding. Of course, another hotly debated issue inside side, of course, we heard is around service delivery and the service delivery woes that we see right across South Africa, not only just in Gauteng. If you are to look at our almost daily coverage when it comes to water, we do know at around 10 o'clock we'll even have a briefing just around SASA and, that glitch that happened where a lot of people didn't get their monies coming to their account, their bank accounts. But we do understand there will be a briefing on that. ANC also debating what should happen and if we'll ever see a glitch like that. But let's just maybe take a listen to the SG of the African National Congress, suggesting that the service delivery woes that we're seeing are as a result of coalitions and them not functioning. So the blame is squarely put at coalition governance and what we've seen around the different metros and municipalities that are run by coalition. Let's take a listen to Fikile Mbalula.
We need to work with everybody and then institutionalize in terms of legislation, coalition governments, how they should actually happen in our country. Now, I've seen people going everywhere in Germany wanting to learn how coalitions must work. But coalition, if we've got them, the solution must come from South Africans. Why do you want them from Germany? Solution must come from us. We convened a convention here in this country with all political parties. We are supposed to negotiate and agree. That is the real CODESA, not moonshoot, going to the moon. The real CODESA is about if there is coalition in this government, in this country, how are we managing it in local government?
And I know the Finance Minister, Aviwe, will also be, just talking about the general status of South Africa's fiscal status, basically, but also addressing the ministers and the NEC members there, of course, about the not the economic crisis necessarily, but the living cost crisis in South Africa as well. I know that will also be on the cards when this NEC meeting continues today. But also maybe just talk to us about what the President said yesterday regarding the crisis in Gaza.
Yes, definitely the economy already. We had a briefing yesterday from Mamaloko Kobai, of course, who chairs the economic portfolio for the African National Congress, suggesting that the cost of living is something that a lot of people can't afford. As the daily living materials go up, we're seeing even eggs go up. The salaries of a lot of people are still remaining the same. So it's one of those issues that the party is tackling. We do understand also looking at how even government can cut costs without necessarily cutting costs to the employees of government. And that mentioned that, of course, if it wasn't for the burden of load shedding and the daily stages of load shedding that we go through, we would see the economic growth at heightened stages of maybe even 2% to 3% than the lowly growth that we're seeing now. But we are promised that we're seeing green shoots, but those green shoots need to translate to job creation. So that's the suggestion there from Mamaloko Kubaye. But of course, also the electricity minister suggesting that with that economic growth, we need the electricity, of course, to stabilize itself so that, of course, as these stages of load shedding are reduced, then the economic activity can take place, and we see that economic growth in its entirety. But of course, you mentioned that issue of Palestine, and it's one of those questions that are posed to President Cyril Ramaphosa, that in government's instances and government stance, they always say that the government is neutral and do not, support any of either sides. If you are to look, for example, in that Russia-Ukraine conflict, South Africa has chose to remain neutral when it comes to that conflict and not choose any side, but also just siding along peace itself. But we're seeing a different stance from the African National Congress, who are, of course, siding with Palestine, suggesting that they are in support of Palestine and don't want, for example, what we've heard from the Israel Prime Minister, where the suggestions that the millions of people in the Gaza Strip must evacuate. So they're also calling for peace, but they're just siding with Palestine in this particular instance and strongly condemning what's happening in Gaza in its entirety.
Thank you so much for that update, Aviwe. And I think we will definitely be talking to you a little bit later on as well, as soon as this NEC meeting gets underway. But thank you so much for your time this morning. Of course, he is in Boksburg, where the NEC, the ANC's NEC are gathering there at the Birchwood Hotel to discuss various issues relating to the country, of course. And as we heard now, so many of those topics will be on the cards yet again today. Whether or not they will have enough time to discuss everything is obviously a good question, but of course it is necessary for them to discuss these various issues that's plaguing the country.